There was a secret I carried for years, one I never told a soul, not because I wanted to keep it from the world, but because the weight of it felt unbearable to share. It was a secret wrapped in shame, fear, and longing, a part of me that I locked away in the darkest corners of my heart. I thought that if I buried it deep enough, if I never spoke it aloud, I could protect myself from the pain it carried. But secrets have a way of refusing to stay hidden forever. It started when I was younger, before I even fully understood what it meant to keep something inside that could change the way people saw me, that could shatter the carefully constructed image I wanted to project. I remember the moment the secret was born, how it slipped into my life quietly, like a shadow at dusk. It wasn't a single event, but a series of small moments that piled up until the truth of it became impossible to ignore. For years, I walked through life carrying this secret as a silent burden. It shaped my choices, dictated the words I left unsaid, and haunted my quietest moments. I was terrified of what would happen if it ever came to light, how people I loved might react, how I would have to face the judgment I so desperately feared. Every day, I lived in a careful balance, crafting a version of myself that was safe and acceptable while hiding the parts that felt raw and vulnerable. It was exhausting, like trying to hold back a tidal wave with my bare hands. But secrets have a way of finding cracks in the armor. They whisper in the silence, claw at your peace, and eventually demand to be heard. The hardest part wasn't just carrying the secret, it was living in fear of what would happen if it was ever revealed. I imagined all the ways it could destroy the fragile connections I had, the relationships I treasured, and the sense of self I was still trying to build. There were nights when the secret felt like a living thing inside me, twisting and turning, refusing to be silenced. I'd lie awake, heart pounding, wondering if the weight of it would ever lift. I longed to tell someone, to unburden myself, but the fear always won. The fear of losing everything kept me locked inside my silence. Then came the moment when keeping the secret no longer felt like protection. It felt like betrayal of myself, of those I loved, of the truth that begged to be acknowledged. I realized that the secret wasn't just mine to carry anymore. It was a living, breathing part of my story that needed to be told. But telling it meant facing everything I had been running from, judgment, rejection, and the unknown consequences that came with exposure. It meant stepping into a vulnerability so deep, I wasn't sure I had the strength for it. I grappled with the decision for months, torn between the safety of silence and the freedom that truth might bring. I questioned if I was ready, if anyone would understand, if I could survive the fallout. And yet, there was a small voice inside me, a whisper of courage that refused to be drowned out by fear. It told me that healing begins with honesty, that truth is the light that can cut through the darkest shadows. When I finally spoke the secret aloud, it was like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. The air was thick with tension, my voice trembling, the weight of years pressing down with every word. But as I spoke, something shifted. The secret lost its power over me. The fear began to dissolve. The reactions around me were not what I had dreaded. There was pain, yes, and confusion, but also compassion, support, and love. People I thought I might lose stood by me. Walls I had built began to crumble, revealing spaces for connection and understanding I hadn't dared hope for. The journey after the secret was told was not easy. It was messy and raw and filled with moments of doubt and pain, but it was also filled with growth, freedom, and the profound relief that comes from living in the light. I learned that secrets are not just burdens, they are parts of us waiting to be healed, and that the courage to share them, to be vulnerable, is one of the most powerful acts of love we can offer ourselves and others. For years, the secret shaped the way I moved through the world. It wasn't just a hidden truth, it was a lens through which I saw myself and others. I learned to guard my emotions carefully, to read between the lines of conversations, and to mask the parts of me that threatened to unravel if exposed. Every interaction was a performance, every smile a carefully crafted facade. The secret weighed heavily on my relationships. I kept people at a distance, afraid that getting too close would lead to discovery and, inevitably, loss. I built walls so high that even I sometimes forgot what lay behind them. The loneliness was a constant companion, but it was a loneliness I chose, convinced it was the price of keeping the secret safe. There were moments when the burden nearly broke me, when the fear of exposure was so intense I couldn't breathe. I would retreat into myself, shutting out the world and curling into a small, vulnerable place where the secret could live without causing harm. But secrets have a way of demanding to be heard. They find cracks in the armor, whispering louder with each passing day. I felt it, an unbearable pressure building inside, a storm that threatened to consume me. I began to see how the secret was not only holding me back, but also stealing pieces of my joy, my spontaneity, and my ability to truly connect. I realized that in trying to protect myself, I was also isolating myself from the very people I needed most. One night, lying awake in the darkness, I made a silent vow. I would carry the secret no longer. I would find a way to speak it, to release its grip, even if the consequences were frightening, because living in silence was no longer living at all. The days that followed were filled with turmoil. I wrestled with doubts and fears, wondering if I was strong enough. I imagined all the ways it could go wrong, the judgment, the rejection, the heartbreak. But I also envisioned the possibility of freedom, of relief, of acceptance. I started confiding in small ways, testing the waters with people I trusted. Each time the secret felt a little lighter, the fear a little more manageable. I learned that vulnerability can be a bridge, not just a risk. Still, the secret was a shadow that loomed large. There were times when I wanted to retreat, to bury it again beneath layers of silence. But the courage I had mustered kept me moving forward, one small step at a time. In those moments of struggle, I found unexpected strength. I discovered reservoirs of resilience I hadn't known existed, and I began to understand that the secret was not a chain, but a key, one that could unlock new parts of myself when I was ready to face it. The weight of the secret pressed down on me more heavily with each passing day. It became harder to keep it hidden behind the carefully crafted walls I had built. Every smile I gave felt like a mask, every conversation a tightrope walk between honesty and silence. I was living two lives, one that I showed the world and one that existed in the shadows, quietly eating away at me. I started noticing the little ways it affected everything, how I avoided certain topics, how I hesitated before answering questions, how exhaustion settled deep in my bones from the constant effort of concealment. It wasn't just the fear of being found out anymore, it was the fatigue of carrying something so heavy alone. The secret seeped into my relationships like a slow poison. Friends and loved ones sensed something was off, but I kept my distance, afraid that closeness would invite questions I couldn't answer. I was afraid that if I let anyone in, even a little, the secret would spill out and everything would unravel. There were nights when I lay awake, heart pounding, haunted by the possibility of exposure. What would happen if someone discovered the truth? Would they still love me? Would they understand? Or would I lose everything I held dear? Despite the fear, there was also a growing longing for freedom, a yearning to breathe without the weight of the secret crushing my spirit. I dreamed of the day I could speak it aloud, to lift the burden from my shoulders and reclaim the parts of myself I had hidden away. That desire grew stronger with time, pushing me toward a moment I both dreaded and desperately needed, the moment when I would finally tell someone, anyone, the truth I had carried for so long. I chose carefully. I picked someone I trusted, someone who had seen pieces of me no one else had. The conversation didn't come easily. My voice trembled, my heart raced, and my hands shook as I revealed the secret I had kept locked inside. The words felt like breaking free and falling at the same time. I was terrified of judgment, but I also felt an unexpected lightness, as if the act of sharing the secret was a kind of healing. The response was not perfect. There were moments of silence, questions, and confusion. But there was also compassion, understanding, and a willingness to stand beside me despite the revelation. That moment changed everything. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I no longer had to carry the secret alone. I learned that vulnerability can be a bridge to connection, not just a risk. Still, the journey was far from over. Living with the secret out in the open meant facing new challenges, dealing with others' reactions, rebuilding trust, and learning to forgive myself for the years spent in silence. But I also discovered strength I hadn't known I possessed. I found a community of people who understood the power of hidden stories and the courage it takes to tell them. The secret I never told became a catalyst for growth, for authenticity, and for deeper connections. It taught me that truth, no matter how difficult, is a path to freedom. And as I continue on this path, I carry the secret not as a burden, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of courage. The days that followed my confession were a whirlwind of emotions, relief mingled with fear, hope tangled with uncertainty. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding behind a mask, but that raw exposure came with its own vulnerability, its own challenges. Some people reacted with kindness and empathy, others with confusion or distance. It hurt, but I knew that was part of the process, part of reclaiming my truth. Slowly, I began to rebuild myself on this new foundation of honesty. I learned that the secret I had once thought would destroy me was instead a bridge to deeper understanding and connection. The weight that had pressed on my chest for so long started to lift, replaced by a cautious but growing sense of freedom. There were still moments of doubt, days when old fears whispered in the back of my mind, tempting me to retreat back into silence. But each time I reminded myself of the courage it took to speak my truth, and that courage became a source of strength. My relationships deepened. People who stood by me showed me what true support looks like. I discovered that being vulnerable didn't make me weak, it made me real. And in that reality, I found belonging. The secret I never told had shaped me in profound ways, but it no longer controlled me. It became a part of my story, a chapter of pain, yes, but also of transformation and hope. Looking back, I realize how much I needed to carry that secret, and how much I needed to finally let it go. It was a journey of learning to love myself despite the shadows I once feared. It was a journey of understanding that everyone has their hidden battles, their untold stories. And so I stand here now, no longer defined by the secret, but empowered by the truth I chose to share. I am whole, imperfect, and beautifully human. The secret I never told is no longer mine alone. It's a testament to resilience, courage, and the healing power of honesty. And in sharing it, I have found my voice, and with it, my freedom.